And this one is from the Palearctic. The Palearctic region was a very cold area. Now, and there's only one species, actually we got 2 species from the Palearctic. This is one of them. So it's somewhere here. They came from somewhere here. So that's how one of them got to Ireland and England, and the others to Iran, Russia, and so on and so forth, all the way to China. It likes the temperate world, the cooler world. Now the question is, how did they come here? It likes cool weather. So how can it come to Sri Lanka? Well, there's another thing that takes place. Incidentally, I'll just give you some numbers for this as well. There's approximately 25 species in Europe, 5 species elsewhere. 85% of the species are in the Palearctic region, in the top part. So we know that they originated there. Now, the way it happened here, how it got to Sri Lanka is like this. You've heard of the Ice Age, right? The Pleistocene period, that was the period in which the earth cooled, and there were glaciers formed all sorts of places, and also in the Himalayas. And some of these glaciers spread, 200, 300, 400, maybe 500 kilometers south. So that was a time when the weather was very, very cool. And so what happened was those butterflies, which are cold loving, came down and down and down, and all the way to Sri Lanka as well. And so did the violets, on which these butterflies feed. Fair enough? So now you know how we got some of these temperate species into Sri Lanka. Because during that cold spell, which is a long time, it's not just 100 years, thousands of years, so they come down. And along with the food plants comes the butterfly. But we find this only in the highest hills. And the reason is that the Ice Age also only lasted so long. And again, there was a warming up spell, right? Things warm up, the glaciers disappear, it becomes warmer and warmer and warmer. And what do you think the butterfly will do? It will fly higher and higher and up to cooler and cooler weather of the Norelia hills. That's what it did. So now it's found only trapped in the highest zones, mountain zone in Sri Lanka. 2 species like this in Sri Lanka. Again, not Sri Lankan, but its ancestors came here. Now it is, of course, ours. They breed here, they reproduce. Australian species. We have 2 Australian species. Autumn leaf and the Jezebel, they're not from here either. And of course, how did they come? Well, this is as a result of island hopping, because they had to go from island to island to island in order to get here, right? At some point, they would have got into Indochina and to Burma, all the way, Bangladesh, India, and then all the way down to Sri Lanka. Now, remember that unlike recent times, the times that I'm talking about, there would have been extensive forests. Man has not made any impact on the global scale at that time, presumably, and there was extensive forest cover, so it would have been not that difficult for these butterflies to arrive in stages from one island to the other and to the other. And also, as they move from country to country, what happens is that they undergo very slight changes. Because the geologic time is so small, they are now called what you call subspecies. They belong to the same group. They will mate with each other and reproduce individuals, fertile individuals. But because of the separation, they begin to show slight differences as it goes along the gradient, okay, from Australia to, that's true for any species that came here. Interesting butterflies. This is a species that is adapted to very dry climates, but it has adapted itself into the higher mountains in Sri Lanka as well. You can see it as far as even Poorten Plains, the highest areas in Sri Lanka. And this is of Malayan origin. I showed you this guy in the first slide. That was the underside, this is the upper side. These are of Malayan origin. But since India and Sri Lanka have very, very similar faunal groups to this area, we call it the Oriental region. But the butterflies that we have from the Orient are really from the Malayan region. So the gaudy baron, somewhat of a rare butterfly here as well, they too came from here. Because the majority of these species are found here rather than here. We have 3 or 4 species, India has about 8, and so on and so forth. So these are the subspecies. So as they came down to Sri Lanka, this is now the same species. You put them together, they will mate and they'll have fertile offspring. But this one is from India. I believe that this is from Punjab, this one. This is a Sri Lankan one. They look identical, but there are consistent differences, and that's this band here, which is not very pronounced here. So these are called subspecies, right? We have species, we have genera, and we have subspecies. Very similar, very slightly differentiated. But nevertheless, the same species, they will breed with each other. This is the large salmon Arab, again a species from the Central Arabian Peninsula. It's India and down the coast, Western Ghats, down the coast, and then to Sri Lanka. So we are not sure where we have any of our own stuff, right? This is another species found in India and Sri Lanka, also of Arabian origin, or the Saharan, sub-Saharan origin. The difference here is this: identical, except that the spots are separated here. This forms a band. These are Sri Lankan species, subspecies, and these are Indian subspecies. And what is interesting is that you occasionally see this guy. If you go to Mana and go regularly and look at these butterflies, you occasionally see one of these. What do you think is happening? The Indian ones actually come across the Pork Straits, perhaps assisted by wind or whatever, or perhaps they fly over. Maybe they might get onto a ship or a boat or something, and as they come close. So anyway, these are subspecies. So ours are differentiating, but only slightly, and sometimes you find intermediate forms as well. And these are endemic species. Oh dear me, I haven't got my slide properly here, have I? We got 31 endemics. It might change, might be 29, because somebody might find something and say, we got this in India as well, so it might decline, it might decrease by 1. So these are the blue oak leaf, these are the tree nymph. We call them endemics because this is not found anywhere else in the world. However, their ancestors are not from here. None of the butterflies that we have of these 31 endemics, their ancestors are not from here. What happened was that they came across India from wherever they came, from the Palearctic or the Oriental or African. They came to Sri Lanka through various pathways. They got isolated in the southern sector. In fact, most of our endemics are found in the southwestern part of this island. And as they got isolated over thousands of years, some of them underwent genetic changes, small changes, they accumulated and became species, in the sense that now a similar looking one like this in India will probably not breed with this and produce fertile offspring. So we give it a species status. So we have 31 of these things. But the ancestors all came from elsewhere. This came from Malaya, and so did this. So they are Malayan species that came here and speciated. Now, there are some butterflies we cannot account for, in the sense that these butterflies are here, but not in India, not anywhere in this area, Thailand, any of these places. How did these guys get here? So we had to explain how they got in here as well. And there are lots of theories about how they got in here. But it is very likely that they came here through a trade. What is interesting about this particular butterfly was that it was first discovered in Gaul in the 1890s. And Manders, there's a guy by the name of Manders who did butterfly work, and he was writing about it. He said this was numerous in the Gaul port. And they didn't record this anywhere else. But with the passage of time, what happened was it was then appearing in further north. And further north, and by 1924 it was in Colombo, and now it's beyond Chilao, all along the seaboard, because it feeds on a plant which is found in the mangroves, which is called a senior moment. Can you help me? Cerbera odellum. You'll get in there, young people, don't worry. So Cerbera odellum, because this plant grows along the coast in marshy areas, and the caterpillar feeds on that, and as the plant spreads, this has spread as well. And I'm told that it is also found in Buttala now, and some interior portion. In fact, it is found in Singaraja at Kudava. Somebody has taken these stumps of Divikaduru, as they call it, and planted these stumps right around the paddy field, which used to be the paddy field at Kudava, just at the entrance to the park. And there's a population of them there as well. So they spread, and they might speciate at some point in the distant future, I suppose. Same thing with this guy. This is a genus that is not found anywhere in India, Burma, or anywhere. It's in the far east, in China, Formosa, and so on and so forth. This too, they believe, came on a ship and then adopted the plants that were here and started spreading similarly from Gaul, and then it came further up north, Colombo, and then it's most numerous now in the Muthurajavala swamp. If you go there, this is called the blue glassy tiger. If you see a blue colored glassy tiger, that's this, because it's completely at home in that particular habitat. And of course, these are the very, very recent arrivals. This was last August. It was recorded for the first time. It's a pest of banana. It's called the banana skipper. Very destructive. In fact, in our area, all the banana trees are just wiped out. It's just completely devastated. The caterpillars eat the banana leaves. This is what we found, and my wife and myself, we recorded these two species, Australia, and we believe that this was brought in by, again, during Mr. Premadasa's time, our president, one of the past presidents, and he brought in some plants which they call Cassia suretensis. Is that correct now? Is it Cassia? Huh? It's now called Senna. I do apologize for that mistake. It's now called Senna suretensis. And he brought these plants for the road beautification program. I don't know whether you remember Premadasa bringing these plants. He brought hundreds of them and planted along these highways, and lo and behold, it probably had caterpillars and pupae and eggs. It was from Thailand or Malaysia, I think. And of course, they established themselves here, and it is now here to stay. It's a large number of years, and it has still not disappeared. It's here, so we know that it has adopted very well. Interestingly, it is now skipping over to Ranavara. It used to lay its eggs on suretensis, which is the plant that was brought from Thailand, but it's now started laying eggs on Ranavara. And that needs a genetic change in order to adopt a different type of plant. And soon, it will be eating that plant, the caterpillars. And I can assure you, if that happens, India is going to get this, because India currently does not have this species, because it is one of the most widely dispersing species in the world, in the tropical areas. It's found everywhere virtually, except India, which it had not come to, because it didn't have suretensis, it didn't have the food plant. Anyway, I think it will someday get to India. This guy is a species that feeds on palms, also accidentally brought from, we believe, from Australia. A lot of people travel like crazy these days, and they bring all sorts of plants that they like, and unfortunately they sometimes have eggs on it, or larvae or pupae. They come here, and our quarantine measures may not be really up to stuff to catch all these things, so they run loose. I'm going to stop there because I've overshot my time period. All that I want to say about the future is that it doesn't look good. And I've given you some statistics here, the number of species that are critically endangered and the species that are endangered. Loss of forest habitats is the principal cause. That's very, very damaging to the forest species. However, there will be some species that will survive, particularly the ones that like degraded habitats. So all is not lost. We are going to lose some of our forest species sooner or later. It's a matter of time, and I don't think we should be very sentimental about it. There are many mass extinctions that have occurred in the past. We try to stop the extinctions, but unfortunately, the way things are going, we are likely to lose a few species at some point in time. A few other points. The major problems, Panicum maximum. It's a huge problem. It's an economic disaster as well in many areas. Proposis julifera, this is also a really, really big problem in the arid region. This is one of the plants on which one of our most interesting butterflies lay eggs. And I can assure you that if I go there in 10 years, this will no longer be there. This is a huge problem in the northwest coast and in Yala area as well, the arid zone. The arid zone butterflies are under tremendous pressure by this plant because it's destroying the habitat and destroying the plants on which it lays its eggs. So I have a great deal of reservation when I say this, but I fear that they will not last long unless something is really done immediately. And a few others in the montane zone, Ageratum, Ageratina riparia. You would have probably seen this in the high hills around Nuerelia. It's a problem as well, displacing all the native species. And lastly, the cattle. We have so much cattle in the dry zone. They are eating everything. If you don't believe me, next time when you get to the arid zone, go to one of these places and look down. You'll be hard pressed to see an inch that doesn't have an impression of a foot of a cow or a bull or a goat. So it's a real problem. The intensive grazing, I think, is also a real problem in the east particularly. And there'll be many lucidly written and with many more stories. This was something that was suggested to me by Ismat, and there's the book that's coming. You will see many more interesting stories like this in this book. All right, so it will be out perhaps in another, I won't guess because some people have been waiting for 10 years, so I won't make any predictions. But it's been printed, it's been shipped, so it should be here in Sri Lanka pretty soon. The African elements, we suspect, will not survive here because most of the plants on which they feed on are not here. If you look at Madagascar, we have only something like, now Madagascar was connected with India and Sri Lanka. We would expect at least a fair number of butterflies to have some sort of affinity. But we have only 2 species that are affiliated from Madagascar. So they just don't get across. They just don't get across. If they do, the route is through the Arabian Peninsula, down Afghanistan, down the seaboard. That's the way that they'll come. But the strong.
Survive the winds then.
We have no evidence of those butterflies coming in that fashion. We just don't have evidence. Not those long distances. I don't think that they can survive. Short distances, yes, I think they will certainly survive. But it is true that there are some butterflies that are extraordinarily hardy, very hardy species like the Danaids. But we have no evidence at all to say that they came from there. Because virtually everything we have is also found in India and the neighboring countries as well. So it's possible, but don't have evidence for that.
But Michael, aren't there some that migrate from Sri Lanka across the Maldives to Seychelles and Africa periodically?
I have heard that story, but I don't think there is evidence. There is no evidence whatsoever. Yeah. Because if you look at the DNA analysis of our summer butterflies, they distinctly fall into like the Tawny Costa, Terpsicho. Terpsicho is not found in Africa. Remember I showed you a butterfly that's more than 200 species in Africa? And we have that and 3 species outside Africa, and 1 species found in Sri Lanka. But that species is not represented in Africa at all. We don't see it at all. So we believe that they don't, they're probably in the geologic time scale, I'm sure they do come and establish, but we have no recent evidence to indicate that that happens.
But is there a scientific explanation for the migration of these butterflies towards Adams Peak annually?
It is a contestable theory. I don't think there is any particular theory as such. Because it's, the question is, why are they, is there a theory that explains why they are going to Adams Peak? But actually, Adams Peak is only one destination for migrations. In fact, there are several. There are at least 12 different types of migrations that occur in Sri Lanka. In fact, in one migration, they start north along the northeast coast, come down to east coast, somewhere down Yala, and then they start going up, and then they come to Colombo. So that's another migration. Then some fly westwards, some eastwards. So the one that you see in the largest numbers were, of course, or is still towards Adams Peak. So migration is not purely confined to the movement into Adams Peak. There are several other migrations that take place.
The expedition had noticed Adams Peak because of the name Samanarakanda?
Correct. Of course, it's a very significant migration. So people know about it, see it recorded in literature and poems and songs and so on and so forth. So it's much more popular to talk about that. But there are lots of different types of migrations as well. Not clear as to why that is. It could be just a dispersal mechanism that butterflies employ from time to time when the populations increase.